Have it your way. Just about everybody knows that's the famous Burger King slogan from the chain that prides itself on flame-grilled beef burgers. But some customers say they haven't been getting it their way, and they're suing, claiming that the Whoppers depicted on the in-store menu boards are bigger than what they actually got. Now, a class action lawsuit filed by our next guest alleges, quote, Burger King advertises its burgers as large burgers compared to competitors and containing oversized meat patties and ingredients that overflow over the bun to make it appear the burgers are approximately 35% larger in size and contain more than double the meat than the actual burger. Burger King has responded in a statement saying, quote, the plaintiff's claims are false. The flame-grilled beef patties portrayed in our advertising are the same patties used in the millions of Whopper sandwiches we serve to guests nationwide. Joining us now is Anthony Russo. He's a lawyer behind the class action lawsuit against Burger King and has filed similar lawsuits against Wendy's, McDonald's, and Taco Bell. Anthony, thanks so much for taking the time. I guess I would start with from an average person who watches TV, sees advertisements, occasionally eats fast food against his wife's wishes. What's the difference between puffery and deceit in this case?
Well, we use the good old-fashioned eye test. If what you see is what you get, you can clearly see the difference from what is being advertised as opposed to what you unwrap when you get the actual product.
But how does an eye test serve as something that could be the basis for an actual lawsuit, right? I can look at any number of things and say, that doesn't look like it looks like it's on TV. That pretty much comprises all advertising to some degree.
Well, when I say eye test, I mean, there's clearly a definitive percentage, weight, some kind of a measurement to use to determine it. But, again, when I say eye test, I mean, clearly you can see a great difference between what you're buying and what's being advertised and what you're actually buying.
Right. And so from the percentage basis, I think you guys, the number was 35% when comparing burgers in real life to the ones in the ads. Not to get too technical or granular here, but how do you arrive on that number? Are you taking burgers and measuring? Explain to people where that 35% comes from.
Well, it comes basically from, there are food stylists, there are professionals in the industry that would be able to determine those kind of things, and that's where you get into your experts.
When you file a suit like this and when the people involved file a suit like this, what's the goal here? Is it compensation? Is it to get paid back for the 35% per burger that you weren't getting if you're on this suit, or is it to change advertising itself?
Well, first and foremost, as consumer advocates, which is what we do,
right.
We're trying to bring about change. Sometimes change is difficult to accomplish without putting some kind of a monetary penalty or monetary component to it. So there is going to be a financial and monetary component to the claim. However, change is mostly what is determined behind what we're doing.
And I think in that sense, particularly when framed as a consumer advocate, if this were a situation where any one of these fast food chains or fast food companies were to say, we will change our advertising in line with what you're asking for if you drop the suit, is that something that you would say would be on the table or something that's acceptable?
That's something we'd have to, unfortunately, consult with our clients and our co-counsels to decide. But, there's been quite a bit of time and effort put into this. And I think that it's really necessary to bring about change, but also to make sure that there's some compensation with the general public. You're talking about tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people that have been affected.
How much of the money, I think, if you put out a baseline for you win this case and you get $5 million or $8 million, how much of that goes to the people that you're saying were hurt or hindered in this case, and how much of that goes to you?
Well, in a class action lawsuit, they will establish a class, and the class will be funded by, the amount of the settlement, and then people will come forward depending on how many they are. Usually the attorney's fees are determined by the judge, and it's, done on an hourly basis with, some sort of a formula that arrives at where, the work is compensated adequately for the amount of time that was put in.
Right. I think the question coming from the sense that there has been an uptick of suits like this against fast food companies, and I think you're involved in 3 or 4 of them at this point. And I think the question immediately becomes, why, right? Is this something that, from a consumer advocacy perspective, or is this something where you see an opening here? There's clearly a movement forward on these cases, and therefore you're going to target every fast food restaurant you see.
Well, it's not really targeting every fast food restaurant we see. There are plenty of times we've been asked, give us an example of a company that has, that is doing it right.
Right.
Comes to mind, there's several companies that are doing it correct. We would say a Domino's Pizza, a Dunkin' Donuts. Those are companies that aren't advertising to the extent that these other companies are advertising and bringing about, the necessity for these kind of suits. So it's really something that we feel as consumer advocates is blatantly in the face of what consumers are asking for, and we've, acted accordingly.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially, there's a lot of talk about shrinkflation, consumer with a lot of concerns, the fact that these suits not only are happening, but seem to be starting to edge forward a little bit. Anthony Russo, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.